Hello everyone, very good evening. So welcome to Mains 2025 free lecture program. Today I am going to come out with lecture number 3 on the subject of economics. In my first video, I have made the trends in UPSC economics. However, I have remodified it in my second video. This is my third lecture. So you can watch lecture number 2 and lecture number 3 as far as economics is considered. This is my lecture number 3. Where I am going to discuss the first topic in economics as far as mains is considered, that is inclusive growth. This is Dhananjay Reddy bringing you this free lecture program for the entire mains for those who are writing this year, subsequently those who are preparing for answer writing for UPSC. So where I am going to make all the videos, be it GS paper 1, GS paper 2, GS paper 3 as well as GS paper 4. These are the things. So to deal with, I am going to discuss about GS paper 3. Topic is inclusive growth, which is there in the second bullet point of your syllabus. Now, before going into the syllabus, let me tell you one thing. Those who are following me in my Telegram channel, that Telegram channel, unfortunately, it was deleted. So what you do is, I am sharing the link here in the description box. You can join that, where I am updating the PDFs that are required for this. Along with this, what I am doing, I am also giving updates there. What are the videos that I am making whenever I want to communicate to students to give some directions? I'll be going through that Telegram channel. So that please subscribe to that Telegram channel if you want some updates about our exam. So let's enter into the topic. Today the topic is inclusive growth. But before going into that topic, let's try to understand what are the overlapping components of inclusive growth in other papers. We all know that in GS paper 1, you have a topic called Indian society. In Indian society, you have this topic, role of women and women's organization. Women and women related issues are very, very important for our prelims, for our mains, essay writing, as well as in general studies. So role of women and women's organization, they can ask questions even in economy, such as women empowerment, women employment opportunities, monetized economy, care economy. These are related to women's and women's organization, which is a component of, by the way, inclusive growth in the topic that I'm going to discuss. So one thing you have to remember is whenever we are writing about the so-called inclusive growth, we have to take care of the development of women and women-related issues. The next thing that they gave in society is poverty, population, and associated issues. Inclusive growth speaks about population because it is about demographics, the study of population, how this population are situated, how many sections of people have the so-called banking access, how many people have employment, how many people are poverty in poor lines, how many people are scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, these things. So population associated issues, we can find a question not only here, even in GS paper 3 in inclusive growth. Along with this, there is one more topic called poverty and developmental issues in paper 1. Poverty is directly related to economics, hence the question can be found in GS paper 3 in inclusive growth or here also. Next topic is urbanization, their problems, their remedies, and their needs. So urbanization, what are the pull factors and push factors? One of the push factors that makes you to leave the rural areas and go to the urban areas is the difficult conditions to live in rural areas. Have the amenities that was provided in urban areas, in rural areas. As a result, what people will do, people will slowly move out of their villages and they go and settle in the urban areas. Thereby, what happens? The urban density increases, population density increases in the urban areas. Thereby, it creates unnecessary pressure on the so-called infrastructure that is available, the resources that is available. That is a problem which arises to it. Again, this is one issue that we have to deal in the inclusive growth. We can find questions there and we can find here. Next one is social empowerment. They have given women empowerment and other sections empowerment is social empowerment. So questions can be asked here in social empowerment or there in GS paper 3. So the topic that I am going to discuss in the next 2 days or 3 days is inclusive growth. This topic is having relevance in GS paper 1 in 4 areas. 4 questions can be asked directly from GS paper 1. That is role of women and women's organization, population and associated issues, poverty and developmental issues, urbanization, and the so-called social empowerment, 5 topics. Out of the 8 topics in society, 5 topics are directly related to economy. So when you prepare for mains answer writing, make sure that you are preparing all this at once. This is the broad comprehensive analysis of the syllabus. So inclusive growth has 5 topics in paper 1. It doesn't stop there. Go to GS paper 2 where you have polity, governance, constitution, social justice and international relations. Right, these are the things that we have. In polity, we'll study about constitution. Then in governance, good governance, and social justice is there. Social justice is polity term of economic term that is known as welfare. In economy, the term that you use is welfare of the society. In polity, you will call it as social justice. Otherwise, both are same. The concept is same. When we feel justice, when justice is done, when fairness is achieved, that is called justice. Remember the words of John Rawls. According to John Rawls, justice is doing fairness, treating equals equally, unequals unequally, giving positive discrimination. All this comes under social justice. In order to attain social justice, every person in the society has to be given some exceptional things to achieve their desired objectives. As a result, whenever we are preparing here, social justice related to inclusive growth. Inclusive means growth of all. Everyone is growing, there will be as a there will be social justice. As to like related to development sectors such as health, education, resource. Directly, it is related to inclusive growth. What I say is, when we prepare, we have to prepare so issues related to management and development of social sector initiatives, health, education, and human resources. Next is that the issues related to hunger. What does it indicate? It indicates that it is poverty, paper is in paper and security related to hunger. So, if inclusive growth, security, poverty, issues about hunger are related. So, this topic of growth has component paper 2 over there. Welfare on the vulnerable sections of population and the performance of these skills. So, done to do this social justice, attain growth. These are welfare mechanisms. Welfare mechanisms, government, by the way, many programs, flagship programs, government, there is social for the people. We'll see that as a part of in this paper, that is yes paper 2. So, to this are going to be separate institutions that will be constitutional institutions that non-constitutional, non-constitution, which is by a result of the parliament president. As a result, they have given this bodies constitutional protection and betterment of the country. Read this, it has to be linked with the constitutional bodies and non-constitutional development people. So, in effect, says we are studying about inclusive growth. We study about that is called social justice aspects of GS paper 2 also. In GS, you have a separate topic inclusive growth. That is what topic that I am going to discuss. So, inclusive and the issues arising out of it. Oddly, we have to do the syllabus of UPSC where it is getting GS paper 1 and GS paper 2. Society to social justice aspects. And here, development also, inclusive growth. In order to inclusive growth, I have to put there is support the micro, small, medium enterprise. There is something called micro, medium enterprise. What happens if the government is not able to include? That is the question. It is not able to give inclusive growth, there will be inequalities in the society. Inequalities breed injustice. Injustices breed revolutions. Anyayalu viplavam. Injustice breeds revolution. Why justice revolution is due to inequality? Why there will be inequalities? Concentrated in two hands, don't find growth. Inequality start as a result of the rich become richer, poor becomes poorer over a period of time. As a result, there creates a big gap between the rich and the poor. That creates inequalities. Of time, these two anti classes where the rich will be against the poor and will be against the rich, inside society will be the solution. This is what Aristotle, and that is that we are going to discuss today in the governance. Governance becomes a bad governance. It is a representation of good governance. There is no inclusive growth. To attain good governance, yes, paper, this is important. Paper 3, there is a topic called internal security. The first topic internal security is development and spread of extremism. If not attain inclusive growth, what we find is we find the spread of extremism. Why spread? Spread because of lack of inclusive growth. Is the overlapping component syllabus. So the inclusive growth. Ladies and gentlemen, people who prepare for UPSC answer writing, the first thing that they will do is they will be segregating. I will be preparing paper 2, paper 3, paper 4 separately. This is intricate syllabus. Once you take topic, you have to understand how this topic is related to other topics in the syllabus. What is the advantage going to get? Going to get very way is we get connection. Very easy to write the answers. So we are writing in canonical representation. Okay, in GS paper 1, GS paper 3, we can get a comprehensive picture of the comprehensive outlook. It is writing the that the student will face is while they are writing, they face difficulty in the content. As a result, people for years and years. Your pen should not stop 2 minutes to write the 9 minutes to write or 2 minutes. How will not stop when we have a brief the third thing is less you can get more out of doing this way of working. Point of study growth subject when we prepare this, you have to prepare in a way. Who they won't realize it. Who realizes it is setting the paper, they realize it. That is the is setting the paper will have this paper to in paper. Why you find look at your questions 10 years questions. Somewhere it is present in GS paper and it in GS paper. Issues of poverty on GS paper 3. So the moment I say inclusive growth, the first thing that everyone should understand is inclusive growth is a broad term where we have to understand the society, we have to understand the polity, we have to understand the economic model to promote inclusive growth, government schemes, institutions to promote it, thereby enhancing the so-called development and thereby giving good governance. If this is missing, if I don't give inclusive growth, revolutions happen, and that makes us to go into internal security. That is called linkages between development and spread of extremism. Why there is communalism in the country? Why there is Naxalism or Maoism in the country? Why there is terrorism or radicalism in the country? Why there is too much of extremism? How the crimes are occurring? When people have some work, they will not engage in anti-social elements, or they are not going to become anti-social elements, and they don't do anti-social works. So productive labor is extremely important to ensure that people are doing their work. All these things will be discussed in GS paper 3 inclusive growth. So when I take GS paper 3, as I am going to deal all the subjects, don't confine this to GS paper 3 itself. I will make you to understand how GS paper 2 questions are coming, GS paper 1 questions are coming, 3 questions are coming, and 4 questions are coming. How much time it takes? Maximum 3 to 4 days. But before going into that, the first thing that I want to give is you should understand what exactly is inclusive growth and how they are related. So this day's discussion, I am going to focus on what is inclusive growth, how it is related, what are the things that we have to look at whenever a question is asked in this section. After this session, I will be giving you some 4 or 5 questions. Please try to answer that. I will be explaining the answers in my subsequent classes. Just like I have did it for ethics, you can do it for economy also. Right? Please try to answer that. In my subsequent videos, I am going to make the answers for that. Right? This is a brief introduction about the class that I am going to take now, that is called inclusive growth. And everyone, you should know the syllabus first. Right. So please allow me to share the screen for a while, and then we will start with the topic. also, right? So, I'm giving you this method which one day and dates of the classes and the time. So, these are the this are discussed second no need here. So what we have to we have minutes. I think we have to know how exactly this topic is. What do you mean by inclusive? Inclusive means different sections. They will be seen minorities, maybe Buddhist is Jain. We have there are you have digital suppressed then we find the possible we find we also the so-called unemployed people. We find so in rural areas there will be such as landless. In the urban area, when I say good governance, and quite basic for survival in ensuring that every community is having basic minimum to some implementing effective governance. Right, that is what it is. First of growth is measured in terms of change in the quantity of the services that you are producing. Last year, 100 crores, 120 is 20, 170 change 30. So, quantity is going, how money is at so community that the work sections are also taking that yes I have because it has growth. So why you have issues, why you have to do census, and support and accurate data is required. The government of India conduct this in 2025. Census. As those who are right, we can expect a question answer. First thing, why we require census? Census will be years as to designated to conduct the census. Of general census. We will control where and what they in paper 2 there is a topic asked required census. This will be potential question. These are potential questions for those who are writing. I know what happens in the class in a country. My policy today. If I want to do for my goal, I have to reach to the common man and to place who is to the remote. I have to give that I should know who is there. Nothing. So by understanding and this teaching effectively to the community in this society government. That is government. So the first thing, the movement growth in that change in performance growth. Now that is by Mukesh Ambani or others, but everyone growth understand the problem. First we have to support population. So that when remember that this reciting it and reproducing it. Growth. the level I have growth is which provides the those so far liberate poverty. To have good health, you should have good food. The moment you give this, people will get liberated from this. They will get enlightened. Their brain starts working and they can contribute to the economy. That leads to development of the country. It also includes those persons who are excluded from the economic benefit to be brought under inclusion. That is called inclusive growth according to 11th five-year plan. So I said three things. A general definition of inclusive growth is it is a new concept in macroeconomics, which means shared growth or pro-poor growth. According to Dr. K.C. Chakravarti, inclusive growth it means long-run growth which enables the poor people to benefit from the growth, economic growth. According to 11th five-year plan, inclusive growth is that growth which liberates people from poverty, ignorance, disease. It also includes those persons who are excluded from the economic benefit so far has to be brought into the inclusion. One of these definitions, it has to be there in the answer. Pakka, you have to by heart it because you can use it in paper 1, paper 2, paper 3. A person who by heart and recites and reproduces is going to get good marks. As a result, inclusive growth, look at this. Poverty removal, providing education opportunities, providing health opportunities, providing education plus skill is required. After that, you will get employment opportunities. All this contributes to the development of human beings. This is also known as human development. Human capital development. Invest in human beings is called investment in human beings is called capital. Human capital. So developing these things is called human resources. So whether population is bad for a country like India, huge population, or whether it is a big boon for the country. For example, the Honorable Chief Minister of State of Andhra Pradesh, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu says, the total fertility rate in the state is decreasing, it has to be increased. Now, why this visionary leader is saying? His comments is to make sure that population is expanding. Otherwise, we will have more dependence and less independence. So with his visionary thought, he said that population has to be still expanded because the fertility rate in the country is coming down and total fertility replacement rate is coming down. As a result, we should have that. Whether population is good or bad then, that depends upon whether you are going to remove poverty, whether you are going to remove ignorance, whether you are going to remove disease by providing poverty removal programs, by providing education, by providing health, by providing good nutrition, by providing skill, and thereby ensuring that everyone is getting some employment. Thereby they will contribute positively to the economy and to the society, and then the society becomes a harmonious place to live, and that is what is called social justice. When people live in harmony with each other and with their fellow beings, with themselves and with their fellow beings, that is called a peaceful state, and that is called justice. Who said this? Plato said this. Right, this is the thing that we have to understand. So whenever we study about inclusive growth, you can write about poverty. So if they ask, what are the government of C? In this definition itself, every answer will be there. Right. Sakala roga nivarini అనేసి ఒకటి ఉంటుంది తెలుగులో. అలానే సకల ప్రశ్నలకి జవాబు ఇది ఒకటే. ఈ స్లైడే. You can make answers. They can ask about, define about intragenerational equity and intergenerational equity. How we can ensure that there is equality among them. They can ask a question on social empowerment. They can ask a question on women empowerment. They can ask a question on the so-called what are the government of India schemes that were implemented to provide inclusive growth. These things. So which means the answer is going to be on human development. Develop the human beings. India has the strength of human capacity. Invest in it and develop in it. Then we can go. So remember this. So whenever we write about inclusive growth, it is very clear that we have to focus on removal of poverty. We have to focus on giving health, giving education, giving nutritious food, giving skill, giving employment. After that, employment can be in different sectors: agricultural sector, industrial sector, service sector. Look at the way in which the question can be expanded. Agricultural sector. Now we have to focus on how to improve the agricultural sector altogether, be it on the input side of the agriculture, be it on the protection of the crop through insurance or be it on the output side. Then coming to the so-called industries, focusing on the so-called micro, small, medium enterprises and developing them will contribute to the development of the vulnerable sections who are present in the industrial segments, and thereby it contributes to the so-called inclusive growth. That is how we have to remove. All are interrelated. Service sector is contributing majorly to the economy, but the emerging threat to the service sector is the replacement of artificial intelligence. So employment is going to be in danger as a result. What we have to be very careful, and the people who are present in this service sector has to be well advanced to the developing or evolving technologies. Thereby their jobs will be very safe. Through this, Viksit Bharat has to be bought in. So the point that I am making is, any question that is asked in inclusive growth, they have to go with this plan: poverty, education, employment, these things. So what does it mean? So inclusive growth implies reduction of poverty, providing employment, reduction of inequalities, promoting skill development, and promoting social sector development. Society has to be developed. Take care of the social well-being, whoever is there in the vulnerable section. Reasons for non-inclusive growth. Why there is no inclusive growth in the country? Majority people say population is the cause. Population can never be the deciding factor to say whether you are growing or whether you are not growing. For a country which is as big as India, you require population. It is how you are making use of this resource called human resource that determines whether population is going to be a boon or a bane, whether your population is going to be a demographic dividend or whether they are going to be a demographic disaster. India's population is expected to reach 165 crores by the year 2065, according to the United Nations Population Census report. Which means our population is going to get saturated at 165 crores. Today it is somewhere around 140 crores. It is going to increase further by 25 crores in the next few years. As the population is going to expand, and as government envisions to have Viksit Bharat or a developed country by 2047, how to synchronize the developmental aspirations of the country with this emerging population? The answer is not to diminish the size of the population as was done by Srimati Indira Gandhi in the year 1972 in the form of family planning. No, it is through active intervention of the government by providing employment opportunities, education opportunities, skill development opportunities, all these things. Now, why didn't we have achieved this? In order to achieve inclusive growth, first thing is I should have money. Growth is incomplete. Without growth, there is no inclusive growth. First, I should give money. I have an aspiration to give education, health, service, skill development to all my people, but I do not have money. Then what to do? So you have to focus on money. One of the biggest reasons why there was no inclusive growth in the country, or why there is low inclusive growth in the country, is until 1990s, the growth rate of this country was very, very poor. So between 1950 to 80, for the first 30 years of our independence, subsequently even up to 1990 also, the growth was stagnated somewhere around 3.5%. A newly independent country which was expected to grow at 12% or 13% or a double-digit growth was stagnated at 3.5%. The moment it was stagnated, this is called as Hindu rate of growth by the Western economists. As our growth rate was not high, we do not have money. At the same time, there was huge requirements for a newly formed country. Hence, there was no effective contribution of government to the social sector initiatives. This is one thing that you have to observe. They asked this question in 2024. What was the changes that Government of India did in social sector spending after liberalization? Which means before liberalization, the government doesn't have money to spend on social sector initiatives. Hence they asked this question. So be very clear. Until 1990s, government has limited money. When I do not have limited money, when I do not have money, I cannot give education, I cannot give health, I cannot give skill. Imagine a joint family system where there are huge number of children and the amount is very, very less. For how many children I can give food, for how many children I can give the so-called education. The same thing right for the country too. So Hindu rate of growth, it is 3.5%. As a result, it was very, very low. This is one reason why there was lack of inclusive growth. The second thing is post-LPG reforms also, Government of India started contributing. However, though there was growth, this growth was concentrated only in few hands because majority of the sections of population could not concentrate. Government thought that at least the service sector which is propelled in the country after LPG reforms will create a trickle-down theory or trickle-down. That is, the growth will reach to the common man in the remotest village. So everyone thought that it will be going to achieve it. So post-reforms, there was high growth, but it failed to achieve trickle-down theory. This is one of the reasons why there is no inclusive growth in the country. Why there was no growth? Because whatever the structural changes that we got after 1991, it was focused on service sector. Unfortunately, we neglected the agricultural sector and industrial sector. As a result, due to neglect of agriculture and industrial sector, growth was concentrated in service sector. Hence, trickle-down effects could not happen. This is one reason. As a result, there was rising inequalities in the country. According to the Oxfam report, 1% of top 1% of Indians is owning 74% of national income, whereas the bottom 70% of the poor is earning less than $2 per day. Next one is poverty. Nearly after 78 years of independence, still 1/4 of the country is under poverty, which means somewhere around 22 crore people of Indians are under poverty, according to the latest World Population Report, or according to the latest Human Development Report of United Nations Development Program. This is according to UNDP report. As a result, there was lack of inclusive growth. According to the latest PLFS survey, Periodic Labor Force Participation Survey, unemployment rate in the country is somewhere around 4.5% of the total labor force. Total labor force, there is 4.5% of unemployment, in which 17% is from the rural population, 37% is from the urban population. 37% of urban population looking for the jobs are unable to get, 17% of the rural population is unable to get. So, labor force participation survey, 4.5% of the poor people are unemployed. Adding fuel to the fire, you do not have growth in post-LPG reforms, stagnant industrial growth. This is another reason why there is lack of inclusive growth. Next, when it comes to the health, the out-of-pocket expenditure of the persons are increasingly expanding. Normally, health and education has to be taken care by the government at free of cost. Unfortunately, in India, these are the two things which are very, very expensive for a middle class person, where the middle class person is spending more on the education of their children and the health of their family. The out-of-pocket expenditure is almost 70% on the health in India. As a result, people do not have money to make for other things, such as education, such as skill development, such as sending their children to good quality schools or providing nutritious food. So out-of-pocket expenditure for health is very high. Education, very poor education in the country, because the care was not taken for enhancing the public expenditure, or public expenditure on education was low after 1947. Hence, private sector proliferation, but there was no control on the private sector. Still, low productivity. Majority of the Indians do not have skill. As a result, though we have labor force, the productivity of the labor is very, very less. And majority of the people do not have access to formal banking sector. So majority of them are in the informal banking sector itself. As a result, they are in the clutches of the so-called money lenders who are highly exploitative. At the same time, due to lack of financial inclusion, these people, whoever is earning money, they were unable to go to the banks, save their money. What happens due to this? Money in the rural areas, savings in the rural areas is not mobilized. As a result, economy will be stagnant. Adding to all this, there is regional imbalances. In India, some regions are highly developed, some regions are not developed to that extent. There are many reasons, be it historical reasons, be it the post-historical reasons, such as the so-called green revolution, which has resulted in the growth of non-inclusivity in the country, or the growth of regional disparities. So all these are the causes which has resulted in the so-called lack of inclusive growth. So what I said, what is inclusive growth? You should get a broader view. Second thing is, what are the reasons for non-inclusive growth? Start from 1947. We should have been an independent, or we should have been a developed country by now. But India is expecting to become a developed country by 2047, which means even today we are not developed. The reasons is poor growth, post-reforms, we failed to go for trickle-down theory, because whatever the growth that was concentrated on service sector. High inequalities, data is given on the slide. High poverty, 1/4 of the population is under poverty. Unemployment high. Poor growth rate in agriculture, stagnant industrial growth, along with this human resource development, such as food, health, nutrition, education, skill development, informal banking sector, regional imbalances. All these have contributed for the lack of inclusive growth. Anything which speaks about inclusive growth, why there is social injustice, what are the problems that the Indians are facing, how to make the country to go to Viksit Bharat, we have to tackle all these things. Then only by 2047, India can attain the status of Viksit Bharat, or the so-called the developed country. So this is a brief introduction. So what do I mean by this? If you want to achieve inclusive growth, focus on agricultural development, focus on industrial development, focus on women development, focus on scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, children, all this we study in GS paper 2. Along with this, in economy, you have to focus on something called providing employment opportunities for all. For that, we should have financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is also important. Employment opportunities are important. Food security is important. Health is important. Education is important. So you have similar topics. When I take the topics, we'll discuss. But let's start with one of the most important things, that is called financial inclusion, because they're asking questions. One is on inclusive growth. Whatever I said, this is brief. You can use that data and you can write why there is no inclusive growth. So how to promote inclusive growth? Whatever it is not there in these slides, you have to overcome that. Right? Financial inclusion. What is definition of financial inclusion? Very, very important for economy because they're asking these questions. You can remember again. Dr. Rangarajan, the former RBI governor, has given this definition of financial inclusion. Again, I am proudly saying that you will not find this in any coaching institute's material. This is my material that I have prepared and you can follow it. It is the process of ensuring access to the financial services and timely adequate credit needed by the vulnerable sections such as weaker sections, low income population at an affordable rate. The process of ensuring access to financial services and timely and adequate credit needed for the vulnerable sections such as weaker sections and low income population at an affordable rate. So what is financial inclusion? Access to service, giving credit to them at the required time at affordable rate. This is financial inclusion. By heart it according to Rangarajan. You have to write these things. Data. More than 67% of Indian population are in debt. 55% of the people do not have banking before 2016, but today it was increased to majority of the population has got under banking sector thanks to Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. So before you can write this, now 90% were bought in. 97% of the rural population in India do not have health service, health insurance. As a result, majority of the population is not in the route of financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is very, very important. Why you require financial inclusion? Due to lack of timely credit, farmers are dependent on the money lenders. Self-help groups are dependent on the money lenders. Vulnerable sections are dependent on the money lenders. The vulnerable section, the weaker sections of the community are dependent on the informal credit, where there is huge exploitation. As a result, this creates inequalities directly. One of the best ways is to provide finance and make them as entrepreneurs. Provide timely finance to the farmers so that they will go and invest in the agricultural lands. Provide timely finance to the micro, small, medium enterprises so that they will invest in their enterprise. Provide finance to the small help groups where you can make Lakshpati Didis, as Government of India has been saying. So finance is very, very important to grow. Which finance? Institutional finance or formal financial institutions are necessary for this. But the data shows the country on the other side as far as financial inclusion is considered. As a result, financial inclusion is must to promote inclusive growth. Always remember, whenever you are writing inclusive growth, financial inclusion is must. What did Government of India do to promote financial inclusion? First, Indira Gandhi has done a beautiful thing, nationalization of the banks in the year 1969 and 1980, where almost 20 banks were nationalized because these private banks were not going to the rural areas or unserved and underserved areas of the country. To make the banks to reach these unserved and underserved areas, bank nationalization has happened. However, it has been negatively impacted on the banking sector altogether. That is another story, but this is an effort that Government of India has done. Nair Committee in the year 1960s recommended priority sector lending. And today we have priority sector lending. 40% of the lending all the commercial banks has to give to the so-called these vulnerable sections. Based on M. Narasimhan Committee recommendations, way back in the year 1960, differential banks was bought. M. Narasimhan Committee means 1991 and 97, but before that, when he was the RBI governor, he has recommended differential banks. Based on these differential banks, you have majority of the differential banks today, such as regional rural banks, small finance banks, local area banks, and the so-called payment banks. No frill accounts. No frill means zero balance accounts were established by Government of India so that people can go and with zero account they can maintain this bank accounts. Credit card schemes were launched. Kisan credit card, Fisherman credit card, MSME credit card. So Government of India started giving credit cards, means prior loans for the community. Microfinancial institutions like Bandhan Bank was created by government. Differential rate of interest. The rate of interest is different from different sections of community today. Vulnerable sections, they will give at low interest rate. There will be interest subvention. The moment you are paying promptly, they will reduce the interest. Bank correspondence. Every bank will have a bank sathi, bank correspondent, to ensure that they are reaching to the so-called the rural areas, and this man will carry the message of the banks. Self-help groups was created, and Government of India is actively focusing on the self-help groups to give welfare to them. Through this, money is mobilized. Financial Institution Technology Development Fund to develop technologies in the financial sector, such as UPIs, so that majority of the people will be getting into this ladder. Financial literacy programs were started by government to promote awareness among the people, and thereby the last program that Government of India has started is Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana to create inclusion. So in the inclusive growth, one of the most inclusive growth that we have to focus is on financial inclusion. In the financial inclusion, whether they ask or not, you have to write these things, the definition of that, and then why we need financial inclusion, what is the status according to the data, and what. After that, sustainable development. Sustainable development go according to the definition of Brundtland Commission. Everyone might be knowing this by this point of time. What is the sustainable development definition of Brundtland Commission? According to Brundtland Commission, sustainable development is the development which meets the demands of present generation without compromising the needs of future generation. That was described by Brundtland Commission in our Common Future report. So for having sustainable development, you should have sustainable agriculture, sustainable industry. That makes us to go into the topic of ecology and environment. When I come to the agriculture and the so-called industries, I will discuss these things. So sustainable development, remember the definition of Brundtland Commission, sustainable agriculture, sustainable industries are required, where we will be discussing more when I come to the topic. Post-LPG reforms, what was our success? Post-LPG reforms in the year 1950, if you compare the analysis of performance of each and every sector in the economy, be it agriculture, industries, and service sector, the contributions of the country is this. In 1950, the total contribution to agriculture was 55%. Today, it was 15%. Industries contributed 15%. Today, it is 30%. Service sector is 30%. Industrial service sector contributed to this. So, post-LPG reforms, what is the change in the structure of administration or structure of our economy? Agricultural sector has turned out to be a service sector of the country, but this service sector, however, what we have to understand is we have turned out to be a service sector, but there was poor contribution of agriculture. Majority of the people are agricultural dependent, but unfortunately that is the thing that was dropped. So what did LPG reforms do? According to Professor Das Gupta and again Rangarajan, LPG reforms have transformed India from a backward to a developed nation. Very, very important. How did LPG reforms help the country? LPG reforms transferred India from the so-called backward country to the developed country, aspiring to become a developed country of the world. Why? With the money that we have developed, we have seen growth, good growth after LPG reforms. We have come out of the so-called the Hindu rate of growth. As a result, there was infrastructure expansion. Due to infrastructure expansion, reduced the cost of production, technology enhanced, transportation charges have come down, service sector started coming out. Due to this, tax revenues of the government increased, forex reserves has increased. As a result, we are in a very comfortable position of balance of payments. Technology has brought e-governance systems whereby corruption was reduced post LPG reforms. All this has contributed for a good thing in the economy. According to latest Human Development Index report of UNDP between 1990s to 2015 in India, there was almost 40% decrease in poverty. This is due to the liberating impact that LPG has created. Poverty levels have substantially decreased. The only challenge with LPG reforms is, though there was growth, the growth was concentrated in few segments. There was inequalities after LPG reform. That is the only challenge. Growth was lack of employment opportunities was there. Employment opportunities was not to that expected levels because service sector has limited set of employment. That is the two problems. Otherwise, LPG reforms has done very well. What are the Government of India's flagship programs? Flagship programs are the programs which Government of India has exclusively focused to provide inclusive growth for all. What are these? SAMEEKSHA Abhiyan. Remember, these schemes you have to write in social sector on these things. SAMEEKSHA Abhiyan. Midday meals. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Pradhan Mantri Total Sanitation Campaign, which took the form of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan.
National Urban Rural Mission. Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban and Rural. Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Mission. ICDS Integrated Child Development Scheme. National Health Mission NHM. Rajiv Gandhi Drinking Water Scheme transformed into Jal Jeevan Mission by Prime Minister Modi. Digital India, Skill India, Atal Pension Yojana, Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jan Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana for insurance, Atal Mission for renovation of urban areas and transformation of urban areas, Amrut, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana to provide housing opportunities for the poor people in the country. Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao for ensuring the development of women or girl child. These are the flagship programs that the Government of India has taken. What are the challenges in the implementation of this? Errors, beneficial errors. People who should not get, they are getting. People who should get, they are out of the beneficiaries list. So there were inclusion errors and exclusion errors. Lack of awareness about these schemes among the country, among the sections of citizens. Absence of monetary mechanism. As a result, there was no social audit. There was delay in transfer of funds. There was lack of transparency. There was no accountability. Lack of empathy of the employees. Corruption challenges. All these are creating impacts on implementation of any scheme. So whenever they ask, you have to write these things. So this is the first topic on inclusive growth. So what I discussed, what is inclusive growth? What are the components of inclusive growth? Financial inclusion. Flagship programs of Government of India, how LPG reforms have helped in transforming this country. In my next video, I will continue this LPG reforms, inclusive growth, and I'll give you some questions today. Please answer them. Then we can go to that questions in the subsequent classes. So what are the questions that you have to do? The questions are the previous year questions from inclusive growth. Take this 2024 question, please write. Examine the pattern and trends of public expenditure on social services in post-reforms period. What extent it has been in consonance with the objectives of achieving inclusive growth. Try to write an answer for that. Distinguish between care economy and monetized economy. How can monetized economy help in women empowerment? Women empowerment, anyhow, I'll take this. You can stop this. Don't need to write. Next one. Is inclusive growth possible under market economy? State significance of financial inclusion in achieving economic growth in India. Explain intergenerational and intragenerational issues of equity from the perspective of growth and sustainable development. It is argued that the strategy of inclusive growth is intended to meet the objectives of inclusiveness and sustainable development or sustainability. So except this, you can write 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 questions that I will discuss in my subsequent classes. Please write with heading, introduction, body, conclusion that I have discussed in case studies. This is going to be helpful to you. So this is your work. So inclusive growth overall, we'll have an idea very soon. But this is the thing that we have to focus on. Right? Thanks for joining. Have a great day. I'll be making one more video on the so-called case studies answers tomorrow. So this is the video of economy. As I said, there will be 2 videos. One is on economy. The second one is on ethics. This is economy lecture number 3, or this is the first lecture that I am saying about inclusive growth. Hope you got some idea. If you have any difficulty in following the questions, in following my lecture, or if you have any suggestions to give, you are free to comment, or you can get back to me where I have to improve, what is the things that you needed. But if you are consistently following the series that I am saying, I think it will be helpful to you a lot. Right guys, this is the thing that I wanted to say. Thanks for joining. Have a great day. Good night all. I wish you all the best. We'll be ready. Please write these 4 questions. Subsequently, we'll come up with the answers. So I'm taking off, signing off. Thank you everyone. Have a great day.